You're watching the PoliticIt Podcast.
Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt Podcast. I'm Senator John Johnson. We've got Ken Ivory with us. Ken, nice to have you.
Good to be with you finally.
State legislator, chair of the Federalism Commission.
Yeah.
Why don't you let's talk just a little bit about you to start with. Let's talk a little bit about your background, and then we want to talk about what motivated you to get into politics. But I want to talk about this gold bill that you did before. So let's just talk about you.
Man, I gave you a bunch of the juicy stuff off camera, right? Yeah. No, I grew up in central Utah. I was born there and then grew up in Arizona. But man, John, I can remember from as early as I can remember, Fountain Green, Utah.
Fountain Green.
And they'd have the Lamb Day parade.
Oh.
And they'd have the soldiers marching down with the flag in front of the parade. And I don't know why, but as early as I can remember, I would just tear up. And I'd see that flag and I just think, there's something special about that. And then I read a book about George Washington and then one about Benjamin Franklin. And I'm like, these guys are awesome. And it just fascinated me. It fascinated me, the concept of America, and then I went on a mission to Guatemala. And I'm in Quetzaltenango, and I got this Guatemalan companion. I'm the only white guy in the crowd. And they have a student protest parade out in front of the Catholic Church, big plaza. And this protest parade, there's an effigy of Uncle Sam on a flatbed. And he's wiping himself with the flag, and he lights it on fire, and just really dark. And as the flatbed gets right in front of me, he points at me. And my companion grabs me, like, get out of here. And I had never experienced political animosity. I mean, I'm just a, dumb kid. And I thought everybody wants to be American, and USA, rah-rah, And that just really opened my eyes that there's this different world and fascinated me. I got back from the mission in Guatemala, and I always wanted to go to Japan. I thought I was going to go there on my mission, and I'm working with my dad, and I'm studying to be a seminary teacher, and I see this note at the Institute at ASU, teach English in Japan, no experience necessary.
Wow.
And I have a little falling out with my dad, and I ripped the note down on Tuesday. I land in Japan on Saturday morning and spent the next 4 years there, right? I taught English for a year and then managed some homestay exchange programs for some universities, started Japanese programs in the Provo High Schools. I was the first Japanese teacher in Provo High School.
So you actually learned Japanese while you were there?
Yeah. I tested out of all the returned missionary Japanese. I graduated with a Japanese degree.
Oh, really?
I'm like the only non-missionary to do that, right?
That's why it surprised me when you said you went to Guatemala, because I always thought you went to Japan. But.
Yeah. No, and so then I get this job. I finish my degree. I get this job working for the mayor of the city of Osaka in the International Relations Department. My first job out of college, And
so what did you study in college? Japanese?
Japanese and economics.
Oh.
And I got the job. It was this really special program with the Japanese government. And I hadn't finished my economics degree yet, but I had this job. And so I'm like,
interesting.
Taking that, let's go, And we went over and took the job. Our first child was born in Japan, It was this crazy thing. But no, I was telling you earlier that I show up, different world, and I'm thinking, U.S. is the big it. Ronald Reagan was just, finished being president, and they tell me, welcome aboard, U.S.-Japan, most important bilateral relationship in the world, but just so you know, we're looking to China. It's 1989, John.
Wow.
We're looking to China because you've broken the basic law of economics. You're supposed to produce more than you consume. Invest the difference in additional production capacity. Your deficit spending, history tells us you're done. And it floored me. I mean, I was just dumbfounded. Like, wait, no, we're America. We're the big it. No, we're looking to China. And they dropped China's 100-year plan in Japanese on my desk and said, read this, and you'll know what we're about. And the first line of the report was, war with the U.S. is inevitable. It's not going to be kinetic. It won't be bombs and bullets. It's going to be cultural, legal, political, economic destabilization. They said, we're going to control the world market in rare earth elements. I had no idea what that was at the time. Of course they have, right? They've done that. And then they said they were going to dethrone the dollar.
And this was back when you were with the Osaka
1989.
government.
Yeah, 1989. And so that kind of shaped my adult worldview. I mean, a lot. It was such a radical paradigm shift that I wanted to disprove it. And so I kept studying, kind of going back to economics, and got into law school, and just kept going back to that moment.
So where was that at? Where did you go to law school?
In San Diego, California Western. Did law school there, and then got out of law school, got a job in Vegas, and started practicing in Vegas. Harry Reid was the founder of the first law firm that I worked for, and I built up my own practice. I had Japanese clients, and all did business in Japan. I mean, I was there.
Your politics don't seem compatible with Harry Reid.
Yeah, no, it was a little different. It was a little different. In fact, I wrote a dissent letter to my state president because he was hosting a fundraiser, using the stake contact list to invite people to this fundraiser, and the invitations, and I was not okay with that, but no, it just and actually that was kind of the start into Constitution stuff as well. I worked for a partner. I was in the transactional section of the firm, but I had this partner who also had a background in Japan, and he was a big Ezra Taft Benson, Cleon Skousen, follower. Every Wednesday morning, John, we would study the Constitution for an hour and a half. He had this guy come in that was like a Cleon Skousen, fellow, whatever, and every morning we'd go back, study, Federalist Papers, founders, first presidency statements on the Constitution. We did that for like 2-3 years.
Wow.
Didn't learn in law school, right? You don't learn that stuff in law school at all. But that was really that grounding.
So what was that like in your law school? Did you feel they were kind of leftist in your law school? So I can do law school, con law for you in 30 seconds or less, right? There's a Constitution. We're not going to read it. We're not going to read the Federalist Papers. We're not going to read Locke, Montesquieu, Algernon, Sidney, none of that. We're going to go to 1803 Marbury versus Madison. The Supreme Court says what the Constitution means, and then we jump to the 1930s and all the Wickard versus Filburn and slaughterhouse cases and all the cases all the stuff that undermines the Constitution. That's con law. Interesting.
That's con law. But
do you think, is it that way at all law schools, do you think, or?
Most. And I think that's
except maybe if you go to the Scalia School.
You get Scalia School, you down in Claremont, BYU, Notre Dame, they'll get some of that, but most law schools it's like that. And so So this is a dusty old document invented by white men, right? Powdered wigs, and that age is past. It's the living document. We got to do whatever we want with it. And so when I got into the legislature, John, I was elected in 10. And I'm thinking, we're going to get in the legislature with all these other legislators and charge the Hill and restore balance with the federal government, a whole bunch of stuff that led to that. But then we were trying to do constitutional things, and we kept being told by our own attorneys, oh, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. Like, well, no, it's not. It says right here. And so our own attorneys were applying
what they'd learned
in law school, because they didn't learn. In fact, John, so in 2013, the whole Bundy thing that happened in Vegas. So right after that, do you remember Mike Noel?
No.
Mike Noel was a legislator from down Kanab, and he was a big rancher, and we called him the herd bull. And he would, just rough, tough guy, but he runs a bill right after the Bundy thing to clarify law enforcement jurisdiction. I mean, we had BLM, Forest Service, law enforcement guys writing tickets to people for expired registration, speeding tickets, cracked windshield, and sent them to federal court, right? And so we did a bill to clarify law enforcement jurisdiction. Federal government sues us. This is 2013. We're in federal district court, June of 2013. I go to the hearing, and the whole hearing is about state, federal jurisdiction on law enforcement. That's like the one area that's clearly state jurisdiction, right?
Right.
Our assistant attorney general says, well, Judge, there's this thing about two governments that check each other. He goes, wait. Where do you get that? Well, I'm not sure, Your Honor. I think there's something in the Federalist Papers. No, there's the separation of powers, and there's that federalism thing, but you're contending that that the state has some power to check the federal government? Oh, no, Your Honor. The supremacy clause, we completely support that. We would never contend that. Federal judge, the assistant attorney general representing the state of Utah, had no idea the jurisdiction of the state, the balance of powers, few and defined, numerous and indefinite, completely lost on them. So I called Becky Lockhart. I'm like, Becky, you're never going to believe how bad this is. So we met in special session and pulled that bill back. But that kind of started the whole Federalism Commission and the continuing education and, all the stuff that we started off on.
Wow. Hey, we're going to take a break and we'll come right back.
Tired of media bias? Frustrated by political noise? PoliticIt.com cuts through the clutter, giving you real facts, clear analysis, and unbiased insight on the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay empowered. Whether it's elections, policy changes, or breaking news, we've got you covered. No spin, no agendas, just truth you can trust. Visit PoliticIt.com today, because informed citizens shape the future. PoliticIt.com, where politics meets clarity.
Welcome back to PoliticIt. Again, we're talking with Ken Ivory. So, Ken, during the break, we started I mean, you'd already talked about the movement, the federalism idea and other things, but we started into this whole money idea, right? And I want to go back to some of that discussion. I want to talk a little bit more about this separation of powers, the idea of federalism and.
Yeah, I mean, right, the greatest mission statement of government: hold these truths to be self-evident. All men created equal, endowed by our Creator, which means we have an exit interview, right? It's not just he who dies with the most toys wins. Right. We're going to account. Endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights. Among these, so it's not the whole list: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments exist among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, right? Life, liberty, property, the power to protect those rights, and money is critical. They knew money was critical. They had just been through the Revolutionary War, and the whole thing not worth a continental. The states were printing paper, and one state wouldn't take the paper of another state, and they had just printed out of control, and there was a depression like nobody's business. And so when they did the Constitution, in fact, I've got a show and tell for you. I think you might have seen this before. Listen to that. That's the dollar of the Constitution, 1787. It's a Spanish silver dollar.
Wow.
And that's the dollar of the Constitution. We didn't have a mint until the mid-1790s. But the reason that's the dollar that's mentioned in the Constitution is because of the weight and the purity of silver. Spain had established the standard for weight and purity. And so this is 371 and a quarter grains of silver. And when I ask people, I said, do you know the definition of a dollar? They're like, if you think about it for a second, right. What is the definition of a dollar? Well, that's what they said in the Coinage Act of 1792. 371 and a quarter grains of pure silver. A dollar, by definition, is an amount and purity of silver, and then a corresponding amount and purity of gold. And so in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, it says no state, and the definition of state meant nation, country, right? No state shall make anything but gold, silver, coin, legal tender in payment of debt. We're prohibited from using anything but gold, silver as money, as payment of debt. And then in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5, it says Congress shall have the power to coin money from gold and silver and regulate the value thereof. And so the value had varied between 15 and 16 ounces of silver to an ounce of gold. And it was important that they needed to regulate that, because if the supply of silver increased a little bit, if you didn't regulate it, you'd have a run on one versus the other, and they'd, take shipments of silver back and melt it down and get the gold, or, vice versa. And so they had to regulate the value, which is what that meant. And then the rest of that provision says, and fix the standard of weights and measures, right? Imagine if you go to build a house, you go to the architect, you tell the contractor, I want a 5,000 square foot house. And when they finish and they build the house, it fits in the back of your pickup. And you're like, no, I wanted a 5,000 square foot house. And they said, oh, we changed the definition of a foot. Or you go to the butcher and say, I want a pound of hamburger, and they come back with a thimble. Like, no, I wanted a pound of hamburger, not this. He says, oh, well, we changed the definition of a pound. We would be outraged because we would know immediately that something is wrong. You messed with the standard by which we measure things. Money is nothing but a standard by which we measure our liberty, our effort, our property, our means of exchange. And when it was a standard of 371 1/4 grains of silver, it was just like 12 inches is a foot and 16 ounces is a pound. And then in 1971, we changed all that. I mean, started earlier, Greenback and then Roosevelt. But ultimately, 1971, so get this great story. So Great Society, Lyndon Johnson's printing money. He's printing money for the Vietnam War and then for his Great Society stuff. And we were still backed by gold. Nations could convert dollars into gold. Well, France and Europe, they see that we're running the presses. France actually sends a battleship loaded with pallets of dollars to New York Harbor. Said, give us the gold. And Nixon panics because they caught us with our hand in the cookie jar printing money. They said, give us the gold. Nixon says, oh, I'm temporarily closing the gold window. We promise we're not going to print money out of control, which of course no nation's ever kept the promise.
Right.
1974, Connally goes to Saudi Arabia, to the OPEC nations, and says, okay, here's the deal. We're not going to back the dollar by gold, but if you agree only to sell oil for dollars, we agree to give you military equipment, we'll protect you, wink, wink. And that was the petrodollar as a substitute for gold. And that was the standard for the dollar, John, until last year. Last year they broke that. Didn't make the news, nobody trumpeted it. But last year, Saudi Arabia started selling oil for gold and for the yuan. China's their biggest customer. They're going to buy oil forever. We can't decide if we're going to go wind and solar or if we're going to be energy independent. And so Saudi Arabia says, they're our biggest customer. We're done with the petrodollar. We're going to start selling oil in the yuan and in gold. And so we're now in this age, John, where money is radically changing because we punished Russia and we weaponized the dollar and said, you can't play in the SWIFT system, this international communication and trade system. We're going to confiscate, steal $300 billion from you. And China's running around to all the nations saying, you're next. If you continue in the dollar, number one, they're going to devalue it. They're going to print it so much that your dollars nominally are going to be worthless, or they'll use it as a weapon against you. And so they're setting up in fact, last Friday, they announced the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They announced their competing currency to the dollar called the unit. 40% backed by gold, 60% backed by their currency, because we're printing money so massively. The money supply from 1971 went from $400 million to $23 trillion. That's why houses are going up. That's why bread is going up. That's why our wages.
I love a lot of these charts that you've built where you've converted prices of things into gold and then shown over time. I mean, the one I saw with the housing, where housing really isn't going up in price when you compare it to gold, right?
100%. In fact, so when Nixon took us off the gold standard, August 15th, 1971, average house on the Wasatch Front cost $20,000 to $24,000, right? Or about 680 grams of gold. Either one. Today, the $24,000 doesn't even get you a down payment on the average house. That's $600,000. That same amount of gold from 1971 buys 4 houses with about almost $400,000 left over, almost 5 houses. Probably by the time we're done, gold's going crazy again today. By the time we're done, it'll buy 5 houses. I mean, that same money, houses aren't more expensive. They're less expensive than ever
worth less
in a fixed standard. It's just that we changed what a foot is. We changed what a pound is. We changed what money is, and we've gone to these, green pieces of paper and digits.
Well, and if we're going to continue to deficit spend like we do, right? I mean, in order to go into deficit, that simply means we're spending more money than we're collecting in taxes, right? And so inflating the currency is another way of taxing us.
Yeah, that's exactly right, right? So if you're going to overspend, you either spend less on something else. We're not going to do that. You tax more. That we've hit that limit. You borrow, and we borrowed from our people internally. We borrowed from all our friends. Can you imagine being in the cabinet meeting when somebody came up with the bright idea? Hey, we borrowed from all of our people. We borrowed from all of our friends. Hey, I got a great idea. Let's go borrow from the communists. What could go wrong with that? And they did. Until 2014, China was the number one creditor, 1.4 trillion. In 2014, they said, we see the writing on the wall. They started selling treasuries. They're now down to about 600 billion in treasuries. They're buying gold as fast as they can go. Japan's our number one creditor, and they're imploding as we speak. UK is number two, and they're imploding as we speak. You know who number three is right now? Cayman Islands.
Really?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. China is 3. Cayman Islands is 4, but China is selling as fast as they can go. But they see the writing on the wall, just what you're saying. And so we're overspending $2 trillion a year. And not only that, the $38 trillion of debt, 1/3 of that is due in 12 months.
So let's talk, because we're getting short on time, but I want to make sure we talk about this bill that the governor vetoed last year, and exactly what you're trying to do. Because I don't think people fully understand what your goal is.
Yeah, so let's go back to 2024.
Okay.
We did the bill then that allowed us to invest up to 10% of our rainy day fund in gold. We started doing that last year, and John, that's only up 75 to 80% in 1 year. Pretty good investment. Safest asset in the world, it's up 80%. So we did that bill, and then this year we did a bill to start making it transactional. People say, oh, I can't, I got to get my knife and scrape off flecks of gold. Well, no, you don't. If you think of Bitcoin, but just backed by physical gold and silver, there are dozens of companies out there now that do electronic gold and silver.
So what's the difference between that and I had Catherine Fitz on here a few weeks ago, and she talked about the stablecoin.
Yeah, so stablecoin, what they did with stablecoin is they're just backing it by treasuries.
I see.
It's really just a way to try to make treasuries transactable. So you buy a treasury, you put it in a stablecoin, and you can transact with it, you can trade it, and make it marketable, a medium of exchange. They want to increase the demand for treasuries because, John.
But that's the government's Bitcoin, not the stable coin is slightly different than that.
Well, the stable coin came from the Stablecoin Act that they passed this last summer, right? So they passed that to enable companies to do stable coins so they could increase demand for the U.S. treasuries. It really is just a ruse to get people to buy more treasuries because, John, they've got to sell $15 trillion in treasuries in the next 12 months. China's not buying. Japan can't buy. UK can't buy. Those are the top 3 lenders to the United States. Where do they go? They're going to print. They're going to print at a level we've never seen before in the United States, which means your dollar is going to continue to drop like a rock. Homes are going to get more expensive. Bread's going to get more expensive. Our wages are going to go less far. In fact, think about this. In 2000, the average wage was $47,000. If you put that $47,000 in gold, you know what that would be today? $700,000.
Wow.
Yet the average wage right now is about $100,000.
Okay, so let's go back to your other bill. So we have one bill that you passed that actually just allows us to invest our rainy day funds in gold directly.
Right. So then this year the bill was to create electronic transactional gold. So you store gold vaulted in Utah. You get in fact, I've got an app I could show you that, and there are a number of these. So it's not any specific app. It's an RFP, but I got to get my face in here. Come on now, there we go. So here's this app that I can spend it like a MasterCard, and this is what my checking account is doing.
Wow.
Right? While yours is going down in value, and most people that are holding dollars, mine is growing in value. It's almost doubled it has more than doubled in 2 years. And so that's growing, and I can spend it. I can buy a soda pop, I could buy an ice cream cone, I could buy a car, I could buy a house.
So this is just like a MasterCard, right?
Exactly. And so that was the bill. It was an RFP process, request for proposal process, where Marlowe would create the regulations that would say gold has to be vaulted in Utah. You've got to be able to redeem it for cash, for physical gold on demand. It's got to be insured, it's got to be vaulted, it's got to be audited, things like that. And then the state would pick a provider, and then vendors and service providers to the state could choose their election to be paid in dollars that are losing value or to be paid in gold or silver. And that was the bill. I mean, we had Randy Quarles, the former vice chair of the Federal Reserve, on the study committee. We had Gary Crittenden, who was the CFO for Amex and Citigroup, on our study committee. People from Mike Lee's office, head of the Bankers Association, on the study committee. And some were of the opinion that the dollar is in trouble. Gary and Randy were not of that opinion, but they said people should have choice. Why do we not want to allow choice?
And that was the purpose, really.
Exactly.
So what was this governor's veto all about then?
I had no idea. No idea, John. And so the bill passed unanimously in the House, right? Unanimously in the House. In the Senate, we lost a couple of your colleagues you were just talking about, but we only missed like 3 votes in the Senate. And I had no idea. I mean, we're down to the last few minutes for vetoing bills, and I hadn't heard anything from anyone. I thought we're home free. 10 minutes to go, I get a call from the governor's attorney. I mean, in the past, Herbert, twice I'd had Herbert consider vetoing some of my bills, and he called me personally and said, hey, help me understand, I'm thinking this, and we'd talk it through, and he didn't veto the bills. I didn't get that opportunity. The things that I heard were we think it's a vendor bill, picking out one company.
Right.
No, I could have cleared that up very easily. We think it spells out a different department. There was a name that was off by 1 letter that we could have changed automatically. Our rules allow us to do that. So I don't know, John. I mean, I can't answer for the governor.
And then we never could get it on a call for, even though we had a supermajority.
No, your bunch in the Senate, for some reason, what I heard was Senate leadership wanted a particular one of the Senate bills, and it was being horse traded, and anyway.
And that horse trade never did come through.
Never did.
Because there really wasn't opposition to overcoming the veto.
Yeah, no, it was.
So what's happening this year now with this?
So this year we've got the bill refiled and ready to go. We also have a couple of other bills, and this, you'll really like this one. As you mentioned, I mean, the cost of gas and chairs and everything is going crazy. But in terms of gold, for an ounce of gold, we get more units per ounce of gold. We're getting less and less units per, $100 or $1,000. So I've got another bill that allows our purchasing department. Our purchasing department is funded with a vendor fee. So they put out an RFP for desks or chairs or whatever, and the vendors bid. And then they say, look, in addition to selling for this price, you pay a 0.3% surcharge to fund the purchasing department. That's how it's done all over the nation. In fact, most purchasing cooperatives charge between 2 and 8% as their surcharge. We charge 0.3%. So what I want to do is add a 1% surcharge to this vendor co-op, and we put that in gold. So it's almost like an internal arbitrage.
Right.
So we put 1% away in gold because we know we're going to be buying copy paper forever, right. Rock salt forever, right. Desks and chairs forever. Why not lock the price in fact, get more for our money? That return on that investment, we're seeing that just from 2015 to 2025, we're getting 400 to 800% more units per ounce of gold instead of half as much on dollars. And so that's another bill. And then I've got another one that allows mining companies that are doing rare earth elements, critical elements, to pay taxes in gold. So we begin to develop an income source in gold, and that allows other opportunities down the road. But the biggest one is this transactional. John, what really chapped my hide was we were the first one to pass the bill, unanimous in the House, nearly so in the Senate. And while it's still out for signature, 5 other states passed our same bill. And after our governor vetoed it, Florida governor signs it with a big signing ceremony, proud to sign it. Texas signs their bill, big signing ceremony, proud to sign it. Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, they all passed our bill. We were the first ones across the finish line, but their governor stepped up. And so we're hoping that Governor Cox has studied the issue a little bit more and
Come around on it.
Because this is why Utah should lead on this, John. Do you know what our number one export is in Utah by value?
No.
It's gold.
Oh, is it really?
Our number one export is gold. Kennecott, even though it's a copper company, in dollar amount, they produce more gold by far than copper.
Wow.
And then, do you know what our number one import is?
No.
It's also gold.
Oh, really?
Because we have the refining companies here as well. And we hold ourselves out as being a fintech. We should be leading on this.
Yeah,
Money is already
fintech, banking.
Exactly.
But
yeah. That horse has already left the barn. Money is changing, right? You've got Bitcoin, you've got all these, stable coin, all these other things. But to back it where you can audit back to real physical gold, you can use it to buy a stick of gum or a house, but you can always audit back to physical, no funny business, no algorithm. You trust in what we've trusted in as money for all recorded time. And Utah should be leading on this, John. And so, we invite everyone. We're working on a landing page right now at igovern.us. I'll send you the link.
Yeah. Why don't we? We'll put it in the podcast.
Yeah. So igovern.us, and we'll have a landing page, and it's constitutional money matters, and that's just it. If we just go back to what the Constitution says about money being a fixed standard, then we'll be fine. Then houses will be affordable. People will be able to get ahead in the world instead of falling behind. And I think this is the greatest democratization of wealth that we could do. Right now, when they print money, those closest to the spigot benefit. Those that get the loans and get money from the bank, and then they take advantage of the prices before they change, before it filters through the system. Well, Joe Lunchbucket, he gets the dollars at the end of the row, and the prices have already gone up.
Right.
When he gets the money spilling through the system. And so by allowing people to take $5 a week, $50 a week, put it in a store of value that's going to hold the value for a month, a year, a decade, a century, now they can store their value and get ahead. In fact, this same silver dollar, well, let me just change. So the quarters used to be 90% silver before 1965. 1965, the minimum wage was $1.25, right? So 5 quarters was the minimum wage, and they were 90% silver.
Right.
You know what those 90% silver quarters are worth today?
No.
$55.
$55.
We don't need a minimum wage. We just need sound money, John.
Yeah.
Sound money. If we just had we were transacting in those same quarters, minimum wage would be $55.
Yeah, very good.
That's the measure of our liberty, and if we allow it to be artificially changed, we're letting our liberty be moved. In the country that stands for liberty and free markets, why do we let 12 people set the price of money behind closed doors? The one asset that is critical to everything we do and save and earn is not a free market. We're just talking about letting people have a free market choice of sound constitutional money.
Very good. Thanks for coming in, Ken.
Great to be with you, brother.
Yeah, nice to see you. Ken Ivory. We'll see you guys next week.